see this is the skill itself. It is literally just text that you could read, that an intern could read, anybody could read and understand what's going on in the skill. And if you're using them in Claude Code, you can see I've got a ton of skills here. So for example, let's look at my idea mining skill. This is the markdown file that explains to the agent what this skill actually does. And once again, it's all just text. So what did Anthropic actually do that made all these skills better? They updated their skill creator skill, which is literally a skill that teaches Claude how to build, test, measure, refine, just make all the skills better and better and better. So let's actually cover why that matters and what happened. So the first thing I need you to understand is that there are two different types of skills. We have a capability uplift skill, which basically is a prompt. So it teaches Claude how to do something better. For example, design websites with the front-end design skill, or create documents, or run Excel formulas. Things that maybe the default model by itself doesn't know super well, but with a prompt, it does a much better job. And then we also have encoded preference skills, which means that Claude already understands each of these pieces, but it needs to follow them in a specific order. So these are way more like actual workflows, like actual kind of like step-by-step automations. So quick example, if you ask Claude without a front-end design skill to build you a website, it could do it, but it might just look very generic. It might look AI slop, as they call it. But if you give it the exact same prompt, but this time you also let it use the front-end design skill, it's going to look much better because that skill tells it stuff like good fonts, good color schemes, good background elements, good layouts. And that is a classic capability uplift skill. Now here's an example of an encoded preference skill, which is the one we just saw in my Claude Code, which I call idea mining. And this skill is a little bit more sequential and there's different steps involved. So first it will look at my YouTube comments. It will look at, some videos in my niche. It will also look at AI trends on X and the web. It will then spin up two different agents. So a YouTube agent that analyzes this stuff and a research agent that analyzes this stuff. And these run in parallel. And then they both send their output back to the main agent, which will score and cross-reference. And then the main agent turns all that information into some video ideas for me, which is why I call it idea mining. So what I could do is I could say, hey, Mr. AI agent, go look at my comments, go look at YouTube, go look at X, analyze that and help me find some video ideas. And every time it would give me different answers. And every time it would sort of do it differently. Or I can just say, hey, do some idea mining, and it will just call the skill, and every time I get an output that I like. And the reason why this is actually important to understand is because capability uplift skills might fade over time. Because, for example, with the front-end design skill, right now we're with Opus 4.6, right? What if Opus 5 drops? And default Opus 5 is better at front-end design than Opus 5 with a front-end skill. So at that point, you might just need to retire that skill completely. But with an encoded preference skill, these will probably stay pretty durable and accurate because the process is very specific usually to you, which Opus 5 won't be trained on, most likely. Okay, so those are the two kind of different types of skills. Now we can actually evaluate them. So with this new skill creator skill, which is an official Anthropic skill, this is the one we're talking about. It's in the repo right here. And if I open up the actual skill MD, you can see this is what it does. It creates new skills. It can modify and improve existing skills. It can measure skill performance. So use this when you want to create a skill from scratch, if you want to update or optimize one, if you want to run evals to test a skill, if you want to do benchmarks, or if you want to optimize a skill's description for better trigger accuracy. So I'm going to talk about what each of these little elements mean. But I just wanted to show you that this is the actual skill creator skill. It's basically just all of Anthropic's best practices on how to build better skills. They've done things before, like dropped a 33-page PDF, which walks you through fundamentals, planning and design, testing and iteration, distribution and sharing, all this kind of stuff, patterns and troubleshooting. This is pretty thorough. So you could either take time and learn this, or you could just give your agent the skill creator skill, and all that information's already in there. So what the evals do is it lets your agent actually evaluate the quality of your skill and then make improvements. So let's say you have a skill for creating job descriptions. What you could do is give your agent tons of examples of really good job descriptions that you want. And then it will look at your skill, it will test out some prompts, and it will compare it to the outputs, and it will be able to optimize your skill for you. As we've talked about in the past, the more you use a skill, the better and better, because you're able to give feedback on what you like and what you don't. So this basically shortcuts that process. Here's a quick example that Anthropic actually ran with this eval. The skill for filling out some PDF stuff was having trouble finding the right spot to put the text. But then after they ran the evaluation on the skill and it was able to improve, now you can see all the text is accurately being placed, whether that is a checkbox or just a fill in some sort of field. So there's two reasons that we need to use evals, and they sound kind of similar, but they're basically the opposite. So the first one is to catch regressions. So this means, let's say we have a job description skill. As a model evolves, it might actually use the skill worse because it's trained a little different and it thinks a little different. So this would basically be an early signal that you need to evolve your skill. And then the second one is to spot outgrowth. So once again, as models improve or evolve, it might be able to just do a better job without a skill at all. And that's when you would be able to run the evaluation, say, okay, wow, without a skill, it's actually better, and I'm just gonna go ahead and delete this, or maybe just archive it. And then we can also run benchmarks. So when a model updates, or when you make an iteration and you change your skill, just run all the evals and run a benchmark, which will give you stuff like a pass rate, a time, and also how many tokens are being used. So here's an example where they said, benchmark the PDF skill with and without the skill loaded, and show me side-by-side results so I can see the uplift. And we get all this information about these different evaluation metrics. We get the pass rate, we get the total time and the total tokens.
If you feel like you've hit a wall with Claude Code, it's probably not because you're using it wrong. It's because you have no roadmap for progress. And that's really not your fault, because this is an extremely confusing space with so many new features and so many new tools being thrown at you every single day. It becomes impossible to know what should you focus on to actually get better at using this insane tool. But today, I'm going to help you fix that problem, because after hundreds and hundreds of hours inside of Claude Code, I'm confident in saying there are really 6 levels of progression when it comes to this tool. And so in today's video, I'm going to break down the 6 levels of Claude Code so you not only know where it is you stand, but what you need to do to get to the next level. Now, before we kick this off, a quick word from our sponsor, me. I just released my Claude Code Masterclass. There is a link to it in the pinned comments. It's in Chase AI Plus, and I take you from zero to AI dev, no matter your experience level. So if you're looking for some extra help to get all the way to level 6, that's where you can find it. Also in the description is the free Chase AI School. So tons of, again, free resources if you're just getting started. So make sure to check that out. So level 1 of Claude Code is the prompt engineer. Now, kind of funny when you think about it, because a few years ago, this was like a legitimate job title. Like that was the upper echelon of AI practitioner, was a prompt engineer. And now, a couple years later, it is the lowest of table stakes in terms of how we interact with agentic coders. Now, what does it mean to be stuck at this level, and why should you care? Well, you should care because the outputs are the very definition of mediocre, right? This is where we get generic AI slop. And the reason you're getting generic AI slop is because your relationship at this stage is very one way. You treat Claude Code as a blunt instrument, as a simple tool. It is not a collaboration, and it is not a partner. And because of that, you hop into the terminal and you just start giving it instructions. Things like, build me my AI agency website. And it might even be more sophisticated with that. You might even have a PRD, an actual list of features. But you're not asking for feedback. You're telling it to do things right off the rip. And because of that, at this level, you get stuck in the trap of the regression to the mean. No matter how good you think your prompt is, if you show up just treating Claude Code like a tool and not a collaborator, your plan is going to have holes in it. And if it has holes in it, Claude's going to fill those holes, but it's going to fill them at just sort of an average output, at the mean, because that's how AI systems work. And that average, by and large, is AI slop. That's why most websites made by AI coding agents all have the same purple gradient and the same exact font and the same exact icons, right? Because it's the regression to the mean. And this is where most people are stuck. So how do we get out of this trap? Well, there's a few skills we need to master. First and foremost, obviously, we need to learn how to write clear, specific prompts. Now, in our example, at the most base level, what are we trying to do with our AI agency website? What is our actual outcome, right? We don't want to just build a website for the sake of it. What do you want it to do? Are we trying to drive potential customers to a newsletter, to an email list? Are we trying to show them potential services we provide, right? What is the final outcome you are shooting for, right? And then what are the sub features that go along with that? That's the most basic level of prompting you have to master. Beyond that, you need to start learning how to read and evaluate Claude's output, right? For us to call something AI slop, we have to actually know what AI slop looks like. And better yet, we need to know what right looks like. If you're trying to build an AI agency website that works, well, do you know what an AI agency website that works actually looks like? Sounds simple, sounds stupid, but you would be surprised at how many people try to build things that they have no idea what the end goal should look like. And lastly, this is where we need to learn some basic terminal literacy. What does it mean when I'm on bypass permissions on and I've started Claude Code in a dangerous state? What does it mean when it's asking me to do specific bash commands? What is a dependency, right? You don't need to know how to code at any point, but you do, at this stage, need to slowly start learning the language and the nomenclature of a software engineer. And at the end of it, the true unlock is that you stop commanding Claude Code to do things, and instead, you start asking it to plan with you. You turn it into a collaborator. which moves us onto level 2. So level 2 of Claude Code is the planner, and this is where our relationship starts to become a back and forth with this tool. It is no longer one way. And the simplest way to get to this level is to start using plan mode. Now, why do I say that? It seems like such a simplistic thing. Well, because when we are in plan mode, Claude Code is going to force us to collaborate with it with questions. So in plan mode, when I say, hey, let's build my AI agency website for Chase AI Plus, it is going to come back with a series of questions to figure out what it is I am actually shooting for. And it's also going to have some recommended steps as well. Now, in tandem with plan mode is the idea that we are not just shifting our mindset, but we're shifting how we talk to Claude Code. Because like I've said before, one of the biggest issues with Claude Code, especially if you come from a non-technical background, is that you don't know what you don't know. And that is dangerous, really, especially when you start dealing with things like other people's data, right? You don't come from a technical background, you have no idea what you're supposed to do. And not only that, you probably don't even know what questions to ask. And as good as Claude Code is, right? Even as good it is to ask me some of these questions like, hey, how do we want to do this? What do we want to do with tech stack? What is our goal in design? There are going to be times where you need to nudge it in the right direction. And this is the level where we begin to cultivate that skill of asking Claude Code the right things. And truth be told, asking the right thing oftentimes is something as broad as saying, hey, what am I missing here? Right? Something I always ask Claude Code is like, what are the unintended consequences? What have I not thought about? Or another good one is like, hey, what would someone who is an expert, web designer, someone who's an expert in database construction, what would they be thinking about in this place? Now, Claude Code, Opus 4.6 especially, is getting really, really good at this, at like being able to intuit what path you should go down. But let's be honest, you are still in the driver's seat here. So when you tell Claude Code to do certain things, it's going to go down a certain path. But if you ask it these leading questions about, hey, what path is better? What do you recommend? Right? It will kind of realign into the right direction, which is very important. So to recap, what skills do you need to master at this stage to move on to level 3? Well, you need to master the use of plan mode, which honestly is very simple. Big thing, collaborative questioning, right? What am I not thinking about? And then letting Claude Code push back on your ideas. Again, this goes to the questioning side. Like tell Claude Code to be adversarial, right? You can even get kind of complicated with this. And when you have it build code, say, hey, I want you to spawn essentially like a, devil's advocate sub agent that's taking a look at everything we're building and telling us what's wrong with it or if there's a better path, right? That's a great thing to do. But the trap at this stage, and this goes into the unlock and going into level 3, is at a certain point, it's not enough to just give it words, right? It's not enough just to ask questions. We need to start introducing specific context, often in the terms of files or screenshots or examples. So to go from level 2, the planner, to level 3, the context engineer, we need to start thinking as we interact with Claude Code is what outside information does it need to give me the outcome I want? Now, level 3 and level 4 is where I believe most of you probably reside. Level 1